Welcome to another edition of This Week, 60 minutes of analytical review of the big stories, topical issues and all the controversies around the world. I'm Somna Sambo. Coming up in 60 minutes, unrest and uncertainty still gripping Nigeria as fury and anger over police brutality turn into chaos, looting and arson. We'll count the cost and the controversy over these protests, as 62 people were reported to have been killed across Nigeria during the protests. Our sister publication outfit This Day has been investigating the matter. In meeting the demands of NSAS protests, Nigeria governors set up Judicial panel of inquiry to investigate claims of police brutality. Plus, former heads of state meet with President Buhari on State of the Nation, stress the need for job creation and economic growth as critical steps to check youth restiveness. And Donald Trump and Joe Biden have clashed on a number of issues during the final presidential debate in Nashville. Now, they hold more campaign events as millions of Americans choose to vote early. Reports just come in and say there are indications that the Cross River State capital, Calabar, has been attacked, with many public buildings being set ablaze and some looted. The houses of Senator Gershom Bassey, the senator representing Southern Senatorial District, and former Senate leader Victor Ndoma Egba, who represented Cross River Central Senatorial District at the Senate in the previous Senate, were involved. It was reported that the Hoodlums overpowered the security personnel protecting the houses and carted away several valuables while leaving the houses as empty.
March. No spoil them now, no spoil them. Carry on well, go use them well.
The clothes go size you so.
This is Senator Victor Ndoma Egba's house
In a moment, we'll soon be joined by Senator Ali Ndume, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Army, and from our overflow studio by Dr. Leonard Zenwa, the national chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. But first, we'll have to get situation report from our general editor, Christian Ogodo, who brings the latest to us on what's going on in Calabar and even parts of the country, including the federal capital. Christian, good to have you. Let's take this, reports coming in from the southern part of the country. What exactly are we hearing from Calabar, and what's the situation at the moment?
Well, it's very sad what is going on in Calabar. It's gone beyond the NSAS protest. It's now degenerated into looting and carnage, being wreaked on the city. For the people who are protesting injustice and the rest, why would they be visiting? Why would they be, committing arson? Why would they be burning public and private property? What is the essence? Is it a dislocation of the socio-economic degeneracy that, yes, a lot of citizens are experiencing? I don't think they should take the laws into their hands.
Yeah, like but what's Governor Ayade doing at the moment in the midst of all of this? Is there any police, deployment or even soldiers on the streets of Calabar to ensure that,
Well, as at the time of coming on air, we've not heard anything about the security agencies, taking control of the situation. The hoodlums or the so-called protesters, they've gone into the house of prominent senators, like you said, like gentleman Senator Ndoma Egba. He's long left government, he's long left, the legislature and the rest. Why go loot his house? Why go, destroy his property? Well, ditto Senator Gershom Bassey and the rest. What are the people trying to say? Yes, there is impoverishment all over the land, but that does not confer on you that power to go and cause such carnage that we are witnessing in Calabar. I want to quickly single out an army general, an air commodore in the Nigerian Air Force. I think he's the commandant of the Muritala Mohammed International Airport. I'm talking of Air Commodore Olanrewaju Razak, who under the Ikeja Bridge, I mean, you know how people's that place is and how notorious it could be. And rioters were waiting to, leash mayhem in that area. The police lost control and they were firing live bullets. But for the intervention of this army commodore, along with his men, to calm frayed nerves and ask the police to please step back so that he could take charge. And he took charge and nothing happened. And he was able to engage the people. That's what the populace want. Engage us, man management.
Okay, now let's talk about the issues we had also in Ilorin, where people, just went into, this COVID-19 warehouses and they were removing some of the items that had been stored there. And then
for months.
For months. And then there are some of those stores, like I saw, even in Jos and all of that. Now, authorities are actually saying that some of these items that are being looted, even from warehouses, are agricultural inputs meant for farming. We had that instance where there was a statement saying that some of the maize that were bagged and then taken away were actually treated maize with insecticide and all of that, for planting and all of that. So if these looters are taking this, what do you think may happen? Are we not going to get into a situation where many people will be dying?
Let's take the COVID-19 palliatives, supplied or donated by the CACOVID. That is the private sector that raised the billions of naira. How long does it take to distribute such palliatives? Indomies, 10 kg of rice or 50, as the case may be. Why were they storing them when Nigerians were hungry?
Well, from what we have heard, they said it was batch by batch.
What is
so?
And if that's the case, batch?
And this is a private sector initiative.
Something that had gone on for over 6 months. How long do you want to keep the people hungry? These are hungry people.
Now
that's why they've taken to the warehouses.
Now let's talk.
Let me just quickly tell you. In Delta State, it was controlled. The looters went to the warehouses and they saw that the warehouses were empty because the government was proactive in distributing the palliatives as they came. This I reliably got from the Commissioner of Police in Delta State, Hafiz Mohammed. He's been on top of his job in calming frayed nerves. So the people in Delta, particularly in Asaba and its environs, had nothing to loot because they had distributed everything.
Okay, very quickly as we try to round up this conversation. How come President Muhammadu Buhari's speech has not assuaged the feelings of these young protesters who have now been infiltrated by all these looters and all of that? And we had a situation even right here in Abuja where the Council for Arts and Culture in Area 10 was having these issues of lots of persons gathering there, and they wanted to loot these so-called COVID-19 items there. How come President Buhari's message has not resonated with the young people?
Blame the speech writers of President Buhari who don't know how to carry the people along. And is the president even at top of the situation? Is he very aware, conscious of the impoverishment of the people, of the economic downturn of this country?
He stated that in his speech, and you could see that he was...
Well, particularly, I think there is some kind of, he had assuaged the situation when he met with the Council of State, where he talked about redirecting the economy for proper growth and employment of the youth.
All right, so, just hold your views there. We need to go to the UK right now, where we'll speak with our senior correspondent on what's going on. And hundreds of UK-based Nigerians have descended on central London, calling for an end to police brutality in the homeland. They gathered in Parliament Square and then moved on to Downing Street to hand in a petition to UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. There have been almost 2 weeks of protests in the UK calling for justice. Around 1,000 UK-based Nigerians have been demonstrating in London today, adding their voices to the End SARS movement. They gathered in Parliament Square before heading to Downing Street to hand in a petition calling on UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to urge President Buhari to bring those responsible for recent killings to be brought to justice. They then marched through the central London, ending their protests outside the BBC. Hundreds of Black Lives Matter members also joined the march. Let's take a listen. All right. And Arise senior correspondent John Cookson joins me right now from London. Good to see you, Cookson. Can you just bring us up to speed with the latest developments? What exactly are these protesters saying, considering that they had sent a message to PM Boris Johnson? What exactly have you been told is the content of that message?
Hey, good to see you this evening. Well, I'm outside the Nigerian High Commission at the moment, where you can see it's pretty quiet. Just a couple of policemen there guarding the building at the moment. Now, there was a protest here a little earlier today, and what tends to happen is that they gather here for half an hour or so and then move off to, say, Parliament Square, which is about 1 kilometre away, and also Downing Street, and then come back here to the High Commission. So around 1,000 people, Nigerians, UK-based Nigerians, were on the streets, and their message all the time is that they want reform, they want justice for those people who lost their lives in recent violence in Nigeria. And they also are calling for President Buhari to stand down. Now, it has to be said that the Buhari regime has made a number of concessions in the last few days, that they have agreed to disband the SARS outfit and also other police reforms. But the people here just weren't too convinced about that. They're very skeptical about promises made by the government. Now, what happened today, earlier on, they began protesting, demonstrating, as you say, down at Parliament Square at about 10 o'clock. This morning. Nigerians, in fact, not only from London but from all over the country, making their feelings known and calling for serious reform. And then they moved on, as you mentioned, to Downing Street, where they tried to hand in a petition to Boris Johnson, calling on the British government to put pressure on Abuja for change. Now, the cops down at Downing Street didn't accept the petition and didn't allow the protesters in. That's not unusual. I mean, there's often protests here during the week, and when there's a mob of people, then security around Downing Street is very tight, and they tend not to allow people to go in to hand in petitions. What tends to happen is that a member of the demonstrators is invited back a couple of days later to attend Downing Street and hand in the petition when there's not too many people around. Well, after that, they then marched towards Buckingham Palace, but were diverted away from there by police. And what set Twitter really on fire was that we ended up in West 1.
Just hold your thoughts there. We'll come back to you. That's Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson speaking with us from London. Let's take a quick break and we'll be back. Welcome back. You're still watching This Week on Arise News. We'll just go back to London right now and get John Cookson's situation report on what's going on at the Nigerian High Commission now. And if you can hear me clearly, John, what exactly are the Nigerian authorities in the High Commission doing about the protests today?
Hey, Sumner. Well, today the mission is closed at the moment, but I mean there will be security people inside watching every moment, I imagine, on the outside of the building. There's, as you can see, a small police presence here at the moment because there aren't any demonstrators here right now. In the week, diplomats do go in through a side door, and there's a lot of chanting from demonstrators shouting, "Shame on you, shame on you." Now those diplomats get police protection as chauffeured cars drive up to collect them and to take them away. There's been no official response from the Nigerian High Commission in the last few days. We've asked for interviews with the High Commissioner, but so far those calls have not been returned. What we can say for sure is that there will be dispatches all the time, or probably on a 24-hour basis, out of this building behind me back to Abuja on the situation in London, because these demonstrations have been going on now for almost 2 weeks. There was incidentally a similar demonstration by Nigerians in Berlin today to match what was going on in London. As these demonstrations and protests continue, seeing images coming out of Nigeria on a daily basis by worried expats who are concerned about families back home and indeed about their country. But to answer your question, there's been no official response yet from the Nigerian High Commission. They're keeping a fairly low profile, as you might expect.
Thank you, Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson speaking with us right from London, and that was live actually. Protests against the now disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad police unit have seen tens of thousands take to the streets over the past 2 weeks. Rights groups had for years accused the police unit of extortion, harassment, torture and murder. There have been escalating tension and unrest in Lagos after witnesses and rights groups say the army opened fire on a crowd of peaceful protesters defying a curfew during demonstrations against police brutality. But the army are vehemently denying responsibility. Most Nigerians and many non-Nigerians support the peaceful protests. But as you know, the protests have been marred by incidents of destruction in the wake of the peaceful marches. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has urged demonstrators to stop protesting and instead engage with the government in finding solutions. And I'm delighted to be joined now in the studio by Senator Ali Ndume, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Army and a former Senate Majority Leader in the 8th Senate. You're welcome to the show, distinguished.
Thank you very much.
Now let's talk about your overall overview on what's been happening in Nigeria in the past 24 hours. We've seen lots of looting, including that of some of your colleagues, like we just heard on the show right now, of your colleague Gershom Basi in Calabar, whose house has been looted, your former colleague and former Senate leader like you too, Victor Ndoma Egba, his house has been looted, and I mean, I even saw someone picking toilet seat from that. And then we also have Senator Folari in Oyo State. He's also a former Senate leader. His house has been targeted, lots of things taken away, including motorbikes and all of that. We've seen Abuja here, attempts to break into a warehouse, but the police and soldiers were able to disperse this. What can you say about what's going on in Nigeria today?
Well, all I can say for a start is the situation that is happening around the country is very unfortunate. It is a result of cumulative frustration, especially from the youths that have been building up for the past, I can say, about 10 years. That is since the coming of the democracy in 1999. There was a lot of expectation, especially from the youths that have struggled to get certificates here, get some kind of education with the energy they have, but then they are faced with this obstacle of and barricade of unemployment, lack of opportunities, which has consistently continued. And the number of youths unemployed out there and those that drop out of school keep on rising without actually doing something very practical about it. We have been worried. I have been personally worried. I've said it in various fora that if in this country the son of nobody cannot become somebody without knowing anybody, then there isn't going to be peace. And this is what is happening. But the fortunate part of it is that Mr. President is quite aware of this army of unemployed youths, especially during our campaigns. When we go around there several times in Maiduguri, in Bauchi, and he was telling me, Ndume, what are we going to do about these youths? That was what initially cumulated to the suggestion we made, that immediately we get the government and we win the election, there should be a kind of fund set aside to take care of the youths. And that was what gave birth to the Empower program. But I can add to that to say that the president has, as you can see, so many laudable programs, especially directed to the youths and the poor. But the unfortunate thing about it all is that the impact have not been visible. And that is the because coming from the implementation. I have cried out sometimes back and accused those around Mr. President or those working for Mr. President.
Very well. I remember when you did that, even the members of the government turned against you.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I will not stop saying the truth. The truth of the matter is that you have a good head, but the body there is bad. You have a president who is committed, who is dedicated, who is concerned. There is no government, as he rightly said, that put up program that are directed specifically to the youth. There is the END program that we started, and it was well funded, 400 billion or 500 billion of initial. And every year, not less than 400 to 500 billion is being set aside for that and even released. But if you go down to the grassroots, you don't see the impact. And you see, it is not Mr. President that can single-handedly or personally go to ensure. So the problem, the odds is actually the ball is in the court of the implementers, and that is.
And I mean, during this COVID-19 lockdown, I remember you raised that issue that palliatives were not getting to Nigerians on the streets.
Up to now, I can
but
say.
But you were attacked and you were told all sorts of things. Now, in that instance, can't you, as a former Senate leader and as a senator, have a direct access to Mr. President to actually lay these complaints without going through an intermediary like the Senate President or someone else?
Well,
to let him know how these youths are actually feeling, which has culminated in this chaos that we are witnessing.
I must confess that I always have that opportunity of reaching out to Mr. President. It's only during this COVID-19 that contact have been slowed down. But whenever I put out a message, the President responds appropriately. Remember when the Senate did the motion, I was part of the motion, and one of the prayers of the motion is that we call on Mr. President to, as a matter of urgency, address the nation. And he did. And contrary to what somebody that sat down here later said, that speech of Mr. President was one of the best speeches I have ever heard from him.
But Nigerians said it did not include several things, including the shootings in Lagos, and then specifically giving numbers, because what the numbers we have now, the dead and all of that, are just mere hearsays. We do not have concrete evidence as to what happened. And in 40 seconds, I would just want you to talk about that. Has anyone taken responsibility for the shootings?
Well, you can't be specific unless you have information in your hand. Right now, you yourself are saying that the governor of Lagos at one time, who is the chief security officer of the state, could not give out the figure. And the Nigerian army that I oversight, when I reach out to the COAS, the normal answer, and it is the right thing to say, is that they will investigate. And after the investigation, they got a raw figure, and that was what Mr. President or the presidency put out yesterday.
Okay, just hold your thoughts. We'll have to go on a break right now. Time for a break. When we return, former heads of state meet with President Buhari on State of the Nation. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week. I'm Somna Sambo. I still have with me in the studio Senator Ali Ndume, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Army, and from our overflow studio, Dr. Leonard Nzenwa, the national chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. And you were talking earlier on, just before we went on that break, on what actually happened in Lekki during the shootings and your communication with the army authorities. What exactly have they told you? Did they order the boots on ground? And did they actually order for the firing of live ammunition on the peaceful protesters?
Well, as of now, investigation is still going on, and that is the information I got from the army when I reached out to them. Let me add that under this circumstance, normally, when there is a threat to the security, normally the Nigerian army are placed on alert, but they are normally the last resort. There are procedures in terms of quelling such action. It is actually unfortunate that the demonstration that started very peacefully, and there was a support from all angles, and when they reached out and put up a 5-point demand, the president was quickly responded by personally ordering the disbandment of the SARS. So that ended the SARS, and they had their 5-point. What I was expecting, actually, is that the leadership of the End SARS protesters would now come forward, organize themselves, and follow up the 5-point demand that they put forward to government and ensure quick implementation of those. Unfortunately, they allowed the other, you call them hoodlums, or other criminals to take over the protest and engage.
But they didn't willingly allow them.
But when?
We had instances now where accusations are on, including that of a former director of the DSS, saying that some senators like you and other lawmakers actually hired thugs and put them in their vehicles, and we could see videos of those thugs going around Abuja, hitting others up, and in some states, in Lagos inclusive, that those thugs were hired by some pro-government persons and unleashed on the protesters, and everything just caved in.
Well, I cannot deny or agree to that, but I can tell you that if there is any one of the key players or stakeholder in the Abuja youth, for example, from my local government, it is known that there are considerable number of Goza youths in Area 1, that area that.
Yes, I know that very well, because
and I was monitoring. Let me give you an example. When I called in the morning, someone told me that there is problem in Apo and that 5 of the youths from my local government were killed. If I was reactive immediately, I would have further exacerbated the situation. But what I did was to call their leaders out and say, what's happening? And they told me the true situation, that yes, that there's a problem, but the police and the army and civil defense have responded. But unfortunately, then some vehicles were burned down, and there was, schemes here and there. Up to now, I said this morning I even called, because they told me the last time that one person from my local government, Pulka, was killed. But when I called their chairman this morning, he said, no, that is not true. Some people were wounded in the process. So you see, another major problem that we had during this crisis is that this, fake news that was being spread without confirmation, without verification. A senator called me on Tuesday night, when Lekki was in problem, to tell me that 4 people were killed. When I tried to verify that, and I asked him, who told you this? He said he had it. I said, okay, just keep it to yourself until we confirm. I called the army to find out what's going on. Army confirmed that, yeah, they are on standby, but they didn't shoot anybody. They are not responsible, and nobody was given a shoot-aside order or anything like that. So when things like this come up, the first thing that everybody should be involved in is to calm the situation down. I know I participated in various protests when I was younger than now, but we don't target anybody, we don't target properties, and all over the world, if you say you are doing a peaceful protest, even if some people try to, torment trouble, you try to run away from that. I remember that during the Black Lives Matters, when the talks tried to take over, those that were protesting peacefully, that were those that arrested those hoodlums that were vandalizing or looting shops and like that, and handed them over to the police.
All right, just hold your thoughts there. Let's go to our overflow studio, where we have the National Chairman of the Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC, Dr. Leonard Nzenwa. Good to have you, Dr. Leonard. Now, let's talk about your own view of what's been happening across the country, and if indeed you have had any position paper on the shootings, especially in Lekki, of innocent protesters who were out on a peaceful protest, and then we had the soldiers, being sent to disperse them, and eventually we heard that they were use of live bullets on them.
For having me in your program. Let me start by saying that I commiserate with the families of our youths that died in Lekki and Nigerians for this unfortunate incident. I think it was an unfortunate incident that would have been averted. A day after the protest started, we had the press conference, and in that particular press conference, we expressed concern with our intel and the feedback we were getting that the protest might likely be hijacked. And based on that, we now we appealed to the protesters and Nigerian youths that they should protest peacefully, that it is their inalienable rights, it is their constitutional right, it is their legal right, but they should do everything possible to protest and to avoid hoodlums hijacking the process. Unfortunately, hoodlums hijacked the entire protest. Now, what happened in Lekki is a black day for Nigeria. It's symbolic, and it alerts the nation that we should be very mindful going forward that it has not ended. Why I say it has not ended, of course, you are just giving us really some feedback we're getting from Cross River State and the unfortunate incident involving some VIPs, politically exposed individuals. Nobody is safe. You cannot have 27.1% of Nigerian youths unemployed, and that gives you about 21.7 million Nigerian youths unemployed. Energetic, some of the brightest, some of the most energetic, some of the most constructive individuals on planet Earth, idle, not doing anything, is a time bomb that is waiting to explode. And so the situation is very, 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 very bad. We called on the president, we called on him, we issued a statement asking him to address the nation, even though addressing the nation, we did it very late. If we were positioned, what the president would have done was, the meeting he had with the former presidents, what he ought to have done was to call this meeting before the time he went to have the meeting with them. So I can tell you it's a very badly managed situations. There are creative, modern ways to manage protest. Protest incubation, protest execution, and process management are all kinds of things that security agencies need to be aligning themselves with. And so none of them has done very well. What we're seeing now is blame from this angle, but the bottom line is that that particular Lekki incident has placed Nigeria on a very black spot globally, and it's a very sad one. We condemn it, and we'll say we must get to the root of that particular matter.
Okay, now let's talk about the resolution of that meeting with the former heads of states. Now, if the former leaders are meeting and taking a resolution, we have thought that a much more concrete way of meeting with the youth would have been suggested to Mr. President, so that some of these desires that they have put in place, which they call 5 demands, will urgently be met. Some of those 5 demands are being met, but one of them that keeps making the youths to be angry is that none of the police officers who were accused of belonging to that SARS, the disbanded SARS, has been brought to book. And the minority leader of the Senate, Senator Inaya Abaribe, actually within the floor of the Senate on Tuesday said he knows 5 of those notorious SARS members, and they are still working free. They are still working within the Nigerian police, and nothing has happened to them. Don't you think this is also contributing to the looting that we're seeing, since they would want to say, okay, since these guys don't want to be brought to book, then let's just, go ahead and do whatever I want to do. And then secondly, what's your view about the looting of these so-called COVID-19 warehouses that had been kept full when Nigerians were actually hungry?
It's very unfortunate, and that also goes down to the entire capacity of Nigerian leaders or those in authority to manage situations. Let me take the COVID-19 food or palliative that have been kept in warehouses across the nation over the last few months and all that. We recall that we did say very clearly from the onset that if the palliative measures are not managed properly, it will create a serious problem. And that is exactly what we're seeing now. I do not understand the reason, the justification why such amount of food stuff will be kept somewhere locked up in a warehouse when thousands and millions of Nigerians are hungry. Under the pandemic period, there is no explanation whether it is administrative issues that may have led to keeping those foodstuffs there. These things are there, it is for the masses. Why keep them there continually there? What gain do you get? What benefit do you get? Now it is bouncing back on everybody. People are going there. Some people are also trying to stampede and kill themselves on account of getting this food stuff. Now, this is a lesson for every person, and those responsible for these things must be brought to book. Now, regarding some of the SARS officers that are not apprehended up to this moment, I think I say with greater annoyance that the president has got to move in personally. If it means to query the IGP on this matter, these individuals that have been identified as being the key bad eggs in SARS should be brought to book, and they should be made to face the wrath, not only of the law, but of the people. You cannot be killing people the way you kill people. We cannot be destroying lives the way you destroy lives. If these individuals have been identified, their locations are known, the police formations where they are known, please, for God's sake, they should bring them out and let them be punished for whatever sins they've also gone ahead. And also must say it, this hand-waving approach of managing issues in this country need to be addressed properly. We have serious security issues across the country, and the youths are latching in on this. The destruction of properties is not the solution to this problem. The wanton destruction of property and attacking of high-placed individuals is not the solution to this problem. After attacking individuals, after breaking into warehouses...
Senator Ndume, and hear your views on the judicial panels of inquiry that have been set up. One was set up, the federal one, by President Buhari, and it was inaugurated during the week on Wednesday by the National Human Rights Commission, and states are setting it up. We have about 10 of them. What's your view on that?
Well, it's okay because it's part of the demands that were made by the NSAS protesters. And I also agree that anybody that is found guilty should be brought to book. But as I said, in the process of solving our problem, we should not equally be rushing just to grandstand or play to the gallery. We have to ensure maturity. Just because you want to use somebody as a scapegoat or an example, you don't, for example, pick up any officer without credible, without investigation, without trial, just because you want to douse the situation, then you sacrifice one or two officers. I believe that our Nigerian youth who have endured this suffering for a while can equally extend the endurance for a short period, get themselves organized, make sure that those individuals that are involved are actually brought to book transparently. For example, my colleague, the Abaribe, said is also not the best thing, because me, if I say I have 5 people like that, I know, I'll mention it. I'll mention it and bring credible evidence to show they are implicated. But when you just call names like that then that will not be fair to the person. We must admit that it is not the SARS that is bad. We need
really?
Yeah, but the way the people in that SARS, some elements amongst them, there are some quite good and hardworking.
I mean, very well, we know
so
that. But
why do you lump it together? What we need to do is for those that call for the NSAS protesters to now step forward with their 5-point demand. Come up with credible evidence.
Well, just hold your thoughts. We would have to go on a break right now. Time for a break. When we return, we'll continue based on where he stopped. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching This Week. I'm Somni Sambu, and I still have with me in the studio Senator Ali Ndume, Chairman of the Senate Committee on Army, and from our Overflow studio, Dr. Leonard Zenwa, National Chairman of the Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC. Let's just take a listen to this thought.
Dialogue should be used to get the youth to suspend the NSAS protest. Where dialogue fails, then we should use whatever means is possible to end it. Otherwise, it will lead to anarchy.
All right, that's your colleague, Senator Adamu Alero, representing Kebbi Central, speaking on the floor of the Senate on Tuesday. He said that Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday evening, we had shootings going on these peaceful protesters on the Lekki toll gate. What do you have to say about that? Do you think it may have contributed to to making the military authorities to take the decision to quell, to remove those protesters forcefully and then shoot at them at the Lekki toll gate?
No, I don't think so. Alero on that floor, I'm sitting near him, by him. He just expressed himself, and I think he overreacted. And most of our colleagues, even then, did not disagree with him. Majority of that was why it was not reflected in the resolution.
Or was it the inner thinking of the inner workings of the President Buhari administration?
No. If you are talking about inner workings, I think should be counted as one.
So why did we have the shootings late at night?
You see, it's unfortunate what actually happened. I don't support that use of excess force. And as I said, we are still doing investigation. We want to investigate when the Army come up with their own report. We as the Committee on Army, will definitely investigate and get to the root of the matter. But let me add that from that day, what happened on Tuesday, I said, I made my position clear. I was disappointed because instead of gunshots, I was thinking that I would hear that tear gas was used, hot water or water cannon was used, or rubber bullet was used, not live ammunition. But as I said, I don't want to be talking from the background of ignorance, rather from background of knowledge and facts. I don't have any facts as to exactly what happened, and we're trying to get those facts, and we'll get to the roots.
Yeah, but why would the senator be calling for this strong arm tactics?
That is, as I said, that was Alero's opinion. It was not the Senate's opinion, and it was not Ndume's opinion, or rather, that was his opinion, and he has the right to say it wrongly or rightly. But in the Senate, there and then, many of my colleagues opposed that, including myself. I said no.
Okay, now, do you also think that the protesters overstretched their luck by still staying and protesting while the Lagos State governor had imposed a curfew on the state?
Yes, that was another problem, because where there is law, and if there is no law, they will not be able to even stand there. The biggest challenge was, that the NSAS protesters faced was to have allowed the protest to be hijacked by hoodlums, as everybody have witnessed. And before they went on that protest even, they should have been mindful of that. Or in fact, the security or the police that I saw them in the beginning being friendly with even the army, with the NSAS protesters, would have created a wall to barricade those hoodlums that would take advantage of it. Because everywhere in the world, you go on protest, but you don't damage. So many people lost their life, innocent people. So many people lost their businesses and their properties, innocent people.
And now yesterday you were calling that celebrities and all of that should be brought back to see how they can dialogue with the government to ensure that solutions are found. Why did you actually say that?
Yeah,
Is it because they were part of identified leaders by the protests?
No,
by the protesters?
Initially, you know, when it was an abrupt thing, so to say. But then various celebrities, I saw them coming in to support the NSAS, and they were in the front leading. So I was expecting that when things start getting out of hand, they will quickly come around, rally the people and tell them, hey, stop this is not what we intend to do, and we will not achieve. We will be just destroying ourselves if we allow these people to take over. But they disappeared. And the youth organizations too, they are supposed to participate, because this thing has more to do with the youths. They are the ones that were crying out loud for NSAS and other problems that we are facing, like the unemployment, negligence by the government and that. So before you negotiate, or before you achieve something, you must be organized. The Senate, let me conclude. The Senate tried to identify, when they came to the National Assembly, the Senate leader went out to address them. They said they don't want to hear him. They want to hear the Senate President himself. And now he said, okay, get me some of your leaders. They said they don't have leaders. And that is where the problem started. Because you can't be doing things without leadership.
Okay, just hold your thoughts there. Now let's have your views about that, Dr. Leonard. Why do you think this protest has degenerated from the calls for NSAS and then up to what we had, and including the Lekki shootings, and then the demands for good governance, and then to this looting that we have seen right now? And what do you think is the solution? Is good governance the solution? Is this also a revolt by the youth to say that there's a total failure of politics in Nigeria, since you represent all the political parties in the country? All right, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. So let's just go back to you, Distinguished. Is there a failure of politics within the system? You're a politician, a successful one at that. Over and over, you've won elections. Is this a revolt by the young people of Nigeria saying that you as politicians have failed in the Fourth Republic? And also, we had some other parts of the North protesting, but this time to end insecurity, not to end SARS, because the Northern governor said end SARS should not have happened, but instead reform SARS. What are your views on why the North seems to be lagging behind on this NSAS protest?
Well, I can't say that the politicians or the system has failed. And I think it would not be fair to me to say I stand here and admit that I am a failure. That is one. But then, looking at the youths from the North, I can credibly tell you I'm personally involved and in touch with them. In fact, when they started the End Security in the North Now protest, and this NSAS came up and it was turning into direction, I called them on Monday, their leadership, you know, Ashiru, Shetima, Gujungudu, and the rest of them, and I told them that, look, if you don't stop that you're on and it joins with the other one going on, you may lose control and it will not be in our interest. And they heed to my advice, and they went to Kaduna, called a press conference, asked the northern youths to call off their end security.
And that actually happened. Just hold on, I've been told that we have Dr. Leonard Nzenwa. So like I said, Dr. Leonard earlier on, sorry you couldn't hear me, is there a failure of politics in Nigeria? Is there a total distrust now between the governed and then the governors across the country, from the federal to the local governments?
Yes, there's a high level of mistrust between the governed and the governed. The youths are simply very unhappy with the way things have been going on over the decades. And so it's a question of mistrust. They do not trust the politicians, they do not trust the institutions, they do not trust the operators of the system. And so that is the core thing. So when you come out with something to tell them, do this or do that, they will tell you they are seeing you as somebody that cannot be trusted. And so that is part of the reason why the protests went on the way it went. The other thing that also led to why the protests continued was because of the way and manner the government responded from the beginning. From what we have seen so far, this is a digitally organized protest. It is a very difficult thing to really get the whole people all together in one particular place, because a sense of what really transpired was that it was digitally orchestrated, digitally executed, and you know, it is an era of social media. And so you can hardly find an individual to hold responsible, to be accountable, as to drive the leadership of the protest. But what I think the government ought to have done is this. There are some credible institutions, or there are some institutions that are interfaces between the youths and also the government. What they would have done was to
all right, I've been told right now that we have less than a minute to end this show. So your final word to the looting that's going on right now. What should the youths do to stop this, and how can government react in 30 seconds?
No, I just plead with the youth to stop the destruction, because at the end of the day, it is taxpayers' money that we use to also put those things back in order. It falls on every one of us. So destruction is not the best thing. We need to come down to the table, let us discuss and find a way forward for this particular problem and issues. There are baskets of wicked problems in Nigeria. We have to find a way to take them one after the other and find a way to resolve it. With the commitment and the passion and the zeal with which Nigerians have, I think when we sit down, we can resolve it.
Just in 30 seconds, what should government do right now to stop this looting across the country?
What Doctor has just said now captures it all, that the youth should stop the protest, organize themselves, and make sure that the policies reeled out by Mr. President for the youths is properly implemented and the impact felt. With the colossal amount set aside by President this year and more to come, the youths have a responsibility to ensure implementation so that the impact will be felt.
All right. So, well, we want to thank each and every one of you for staying with us, Senator Ali Ndume and Dr. Leonard Nzenwa. That's how it's been on this edition of This Week with me, Somna Sambo. Please keep it here on Arise News, and from the entire team here in Abuja, London, and Lagos. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.